IIA Australia issued a fact sheet talking about that we moved already from the risk-based internal auditing into the partnership stage, and now we are into the value-based auditing. The question that most internal auditors are asking themselves maybe now is, should we, base our internal audit plans on risk-based approach, or is there another approach? And what do we mean by the value creation or the value adding approach?
Right, that's a very, very good question. And it's something I've been struggling with for, oh my goodness, 30 years, since I had my first position as a head of internal audit department. So if you look at the definition of internal auditing from the IIA, or the mission for internal auditing, it says that we help both create and protect value. We tended to focus on protecting value and not paid enough attention to how we help make sure the organization is in a position to create value. Having said which, what I've just been talking about in auditing that matters, if you matter, you're delivering value, right? So here again, I am talking about doing work, providing the product of that work, which is assurance, advice, and insight, that has value not to us, but to the people who are running the organization. One of the tests I've used for decades in looking at an audit is this something that the company should actually pay for? Is this something that the executives or the board will gladly pay for? And frankly, I've had a number of wonderful compliments over the years, but one of them I treasure was the CEO of the largest division of my first company as head of internal audit, Dwight Wiggins, told me that he had yet to find an audit that we'd done that he wouldn't gladly pay for. And he went on in another meeting to talk about how internal audit had actually given the organization a strategic advantage. But what does this mean? It means that even 30 years ago, I was understanding the risks faced in the organization, but more in terms of what I now talk about, which is don't talk about risk, talk about the things that might happen, because they can have a positive effect as well as a negative effect. And we need to help the organization realize the opportunities as well as avoid the downside, both sides. So yes, understand the things that might happen, but also think about, okay, would it actually add value to the organization for me to work on that? And the most obvious example is if the leadership of the organization is already working on a problem and they've got 15 people in a task force working on it, what's the point of us doing it as well? It's important, it's a high risk, but there's not an awful lot of value. On the other hand, there are times when, for example, in the oil industry, we spent millions of dollars a day sometimes in a refinery doing maintenance work. And although it wasn't necessarily the highest level of risk, the possibility that our contractors would overcharge us potentially millions of dollars was high. And I was able to put specialist auditors to work on auditing the contractors. And we had a return on investment, ROI, of 10 to 1. For every dollar I spent on contract auditing, we got a return of $10. $10 for every dollar spent. And so management loved this, the board loved this, and I still was able to do the other stuff, provide assurance on the more significant issues. But they paid me, they gave me the resources to do this work because it was high value. And so I think sometimes we need to be looking at both of those. Another example is if you look at the revenue cycle, you're looking at sales. One of the things that auditors don't think about very often is the sales task force empowered? Is it resourced? Is it managed in such a way that we can actually generate the highest possible revenue by driving customer satisfaction? Are we making the best use of the highest power salespeople to work on the opportunities, or are we putting them, because they're very good at squeezing a little out of very, very small opportunities, are we putting them where perhaps it could be somewhere else? So there are things we could be doing which are of higher value. So I always looked at it as being risk and value auditing. And it comes back to how can we add the most value to the organization? And one of the things I'm thinking about today, I've been talking for many years about auditing at the speed of risk. A few years later, I started talking about auditing at the speed of the business.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started talking about being agile in your auditing, which means you've got to be able to move fast and finish audits quickly so that you can audit at speed. But I also think now we need to understand how business is changing and how the speed of decision-making is changing. People have to make decisions sometimes based on less than perfect information because that's necessary in today's fast-moving environment. So perhaps we also need to be starting to think about auditing at the speed of decision-making.
Is there a difference between auditing value protection and auditing value creation? And this is, I think you highlighted this in one of your articles recently.
Well, it's like I said, first of all, if all you do is avoid failure, you're doomed to fail. If, for example, if you decided that you needed to go outside, if you are looking very carefully at your feet and making sure you don't step on something dangerous, you'll never get there, right? You have to move at a certain level of speed to eventually get there. So it's much more about taking the right level of risk and understanding what you need to do. But like I said earlier, the business exists, any business, any organization, even government, they are taking risk all the time. It's a matter of are they taking the right risk? And internal auditors, we need to stop thinking about always managing and mitigating risk. We should be looking at helping the organization take the right risk, being intelligent and informed when they make decisions, and make those quality decisions, taking risk when it's necessary to take risk, and being successful. So I think what we need to, again, for internal auditing, if we are to matter, we've got to help them make those quality decisions. We've got to help them take the risk. We've got to help them also to realize all those opportunities. One of the things I talked about for many years, I have spoken about it recently, is the fact that very few organizations spend a lot of time thinking about how can they use new technology effectively. They tend to wait for somebody else to use it, and then they figure out how they can use it themselves. And as a result, they can be second to market, second to using new technology, and lose some competitive advantage. And so, as an internal auditor, I will be talking to my executive team and saying, how are you looking at all of these new technologies, whether it be virtual reality or AI, artificial intelligence, or these other things? Have you really thought through how we could use them? Are you putting enough resources into that? Or are we just waiting for somebody else to tell us, to show us the way?